I will give you $100 million if you solve this. The millionaire laughed. The laughter didn't just echo, it rolled, heavy and mocking, across the vast glass and steel hall. It bounced off marble floors, slid along chrome pillars, and wrapped itself around the small figure standing alone at the center. Men in identical navy blue suits formed a loose circle, their polished shoes tapping impatiently, their fingers pointing, their smiles sharp with amusement. This wasn't curiosity. This was entertainment. At the center stood a boy, no older than 6. He looked impossibly small against the towering executives. His shirt was torn near the shoulder, stained with dust and sweat. His trousers hung loose, frayed at the edges. A bulging sack filled with crushed cans and plastic bottles was strapped across his thin back, bending his posture slightly forward, as if the weight of the world had already found him. His feet, wrapped in worn sandals, barely made a sound against the cold marble floor. In front of him stood a blackboard on a wooden stand, written in clean, confident chalk strokes was a single line, 5,678 equals. Asterisk. The silence stretched so long that it began to feel heavier than the laughter that came before it. The boy took a slow breath, not the shaky kind people expected from a child, under pressure, but a steady one, practiced, deliberate. He lifted his right hand slightly, hesitated, then lowered it again. His eyes moved across the numbers on the board. Not left to right like a reader, but in small jumps, as if he were rearranging the figures inside his head. The executive shifted uncomfortably. "This is getting awkward," one of them muttered. Another scoffed. "He's stalling." But the millionaire didn't interrupt. His arms were still folded, yet his posture had changed. He leaned forward now, curiosity creeping in despite himself. He had seen countless prodigies paraded in front of him over the years, children trained by tutors, molded by elite schools. This boy had none of that, and yet, there was something unsettling about his calm. The boy finally spoke. "Can I use chalk?" he asked softly. The request caught everyone off guard. A ripple of laughter tried to rise again but failed halfway, dissolving into murmurs. The millionaire raised an eyebrow, then gestured toward the tray beneath the board. "Be my guest." The boy stepped forward. Each step echoed in the vast room. He reached the board, picked up the chalk with fingers still smudged with grime, and paused. Up close, the contrast was even more striking. The clean, pristine board against the roughness of his hands, the faint scars on his knuckles, the thinness of his wrists. He didn't write the answer. Instead, he wrote something else. He broke the problem apart. 5,678 became 5,600, plus 70 plus 8. A few men frowned. "What is he doing? Is this some trick?" The boy began multiplying each part by 2, one by one, calmly, methodically. His handwriting was uneven but confident, like someone who cared more about clarity than appearance. 5,000 equals 10,000 2 times 600 equals 1,200 2 times 70 equals 142 times 8 equals 16. He paused again, stepped back, and looked at what he had written. The room had gone completely silent. Even the air conditioning hum felt loud now. The millionaire uncrossed his arms. The boy added the numbers together, stacking them carefully. 10012000140 plus 16, before he finished writing the final line. Someone whispered, almost involuntarily, That's actually right so far." The boy wrote the answer. 11356. He lowered the chalk and turned around. For a heartbeat, no one reacted. Then a laugh burst out, sharp, incredulous. Wait, is that correct?" Someone said. Another man pulled out his phone, fingers flying across the calculator app. His face changed as the result appeared on the screen. The color drained from his cheeks. "It's right," he said quietly. The words landed like a thunderclap. It's correct." A wave of shock rippled through the room. Men who had been smirking seconds ago now stared at the boy as if he had performed a magic trick. Some laughed nervously, unsure how to process what they had just seen. Others stood frozen, calculators glowing in their hands. Confirmation staring back at them in cold digital numbers. The millionaire didn't smile. He stared at the board. Then at the boy, then back at the board again. His jaw tightened. "That doesn't prove anything," one executive said quickly, trying to recover. "It's just a simple multiplication." "Yes," another agreed, too eagerly. "He probably memorized tricks." The boy's gaze flicked toward them, not angry, not proud, just observant. "I didn't memorize it," he said. "I counted it." That simple sentence struck harder than the calculation itself. The millionaire took a step closer. "Where did you learn to do that?" he asked. The boy shrugged slightly. "From counting bottles," he said. "If I don't count right, I don't eat." No one laughed this time. The room suddenly felt much smaller. The millionaire exhaled slowly, rubbing his chin. "Interesting," he murmured. "Very interesting." He straightened, telling himself this meant nothing. One correct answer didn't change the world. He had made a dramatic promise for effect, not because he believed it would be challenged. Still, he glanced around and noticed something that unsettled him even more. The executives were no longer laughing at the boy. They were watching him with respect. The millionaire turned back to the child. "Tell me," he said, his voice quieter now, "what's your name?" The boy hesitated. "Eli," he replied. "Eli," the millionaire repeated. "Do you know what $100 million means?" Eli nodded slowly. "It means nobody in my family would sleep hungry again." The words hit like a blow. The millionaire looked away for a moment, toward the glass walls, toward the city skyline he owned in pieces and percentages. For the first time since the boy had walked in, something uncomfortable stirred in his chest, something that had nothing to do with money. But he pushed it down. "This isn't over," he said, turning back. "One problem isn't enough to win a fortune." A few executives nodded. Relieved, the millionaire smiled again, but this time, the smile didn't reach his eyes. "Let's see how far this really goes." And without realizing it, the man who had intended to humiliate a child had just stepped into a challenge that would unravel far more than a simple equation. The men laughed louder when they saw it. One clutched his stomach. Another wiped tears from his eyes. A third leaned forward, pointing at the boy as if he were some kind of exhibit. "This is priceless," someone said. "Absolutely priceless." Then the millionaire stepped forward. He was tall, broad-shouldered, perfectly groomed. His suit fit him like it had been sculpted onto his body, his tie perfectly centered, his hair slicked back without a strand out of place. A faint smile rested on his lips, the kind that came from never being challenged, from always winning. When he spoke, the room fell silent instantly. "I'll give you $100 million, he said slowly, deliberately, savoring every syllable. "If you can solve this." A sharp intake of breath rippled through the crowd, followed by explosive laughter. $100 million. The number itself felt absurd. Ridiculous. A fortune casually tossed into the air like loose change. To the men watching, it wasn't a promise. It was a punchline. A way to remind the boy, and everyone else, exactly where power lived. The millionaire folded his arms and leaned back slightly, eyes glittering. "Go on," he added, pretending generosity. "Take your time. We're not going anywhere." Whispers spread like wildfire. "He doesn't even know multiplication. Why is he staring like that? This is cruel, but hilarious." Yet something didn't sit right. That the boy wasn't crying. He wasn't begging. He wasn't frozen in fear. He stood perfectly still, his dark eyes fixed on the blackboard, unblinking. The laughter washed over him, but it didn't penetrate. His lips pressed together slightly, his brow tightening, not in panic, but in focus. His small fingers twitched once at his side, as if counting something invisible. The millionaire noticed it. He tilted his head, studying the boy more closely. "You understand what this is, right?" he asked, his tone suddenly sharper. "That's a multiplication problem." The boy nodded once, slowly. That single movement sent a strange ripple through the room. A few laughs faltered. One man lowered his hand. Another straightened up, squinting as if seeing the child for the first time. The boy shifted his weight, the sack on his back rustling softly. His gaze never left the board. In his mind, numbers weren't chalk marks. They were patterns, rhythms. He had learned them in the margins of hunger, in the quiet moments between collecting bottles, counting coins, surviving days where every mistake mattered. The millionaire's smile tightened. "Go on," he said again, this time less amused. "Show us what you've got." Silence settled, thick, uncomfortable. Because suddenly, the joke didn't feel so funny anymore. Asterisk. The millionaire snapped his fingers once. The sound echoed through the room like a starting gun. "Bring another board," he said. "Something more interesting." An assistant hurried forward, wheeling in a second chalkboard, larger and cleaner. This one already had numbers written on it, longer, messier, intimidating by design. It wasn't just multiplication anymore. There were brackets, fractions, and a pattern hidden beneath chaos, a deliberate trap. Several executives exchanged satisfied looks. This was more like it. This was where children failed. Eli didn't step back. He stood where he was, his small shoulders squared, the sack of recyclables resting against his spine like a reminder of gravity, of reality. His fingers curled slightly, chalk dust still clinging to his skin. The millionaire gestured toward the board. "Solve this," he said. "No tricks. No help." Eli tilted his head. Not in fear, in curiosity. He studied the board the same way he'd studied the first problem, not rushing, not freezing. His eyes traced the numbers, then paused. Something subtle changed in his expression, something only a careful observer would catch: recognition. "You don't need all of it," Eli said quietly. A ripple of confusion passed through the room. "What do you mean?" One man scoffed. Eli stepped closer and pointed to a corner of the board. "This part cancels that part," he explained. "It's made to look big so people panic." The room went still. The millionaire's eyebrows shot up before he could stop them. Eli picked up the chalk again. This time, he didn't write everything. He crossed things out. One line, then another. Gasps followed each stroke. "What? He can't just... Is he allowed to do that?" The millionaire raised his hand, silencing them. His eyes were locked on the boy now. Eli rewrote the remaining numbers neatly, reducing the problem to something much smaller, almost elegant. "It's a pattern," he said, half to himself. "You repeat it twice." He wrote the final steps quickly now, confidence replacing hesitation. Chalk tapped lightly against the board as he finished. He stepped back. The answer sat there, unassuming. Simple, too simple. Silence. Then chaos. "That's impossible." "No way. Check it. Check it now." Phones came out again. Calculators glowed. One man's hand began to shake. "It's right," someone whispered. Another voice, louder this time. "It's right again." The millionaire felt something cold slide down his spine. Twice was no coincidence. He stared at Eli, really stared. The dirt on his shirt, the worn fabric, the tiredness around his eyes that didn't belong to a child. This wasn't training. This wasn't privilege. This was survival sharpened into instinct. "Where are your parents?" the millionaire asked suddenly. The question sliced through the noise. Eli's hands lowered. His voice softened. "My mom died. My dad left." A silence heavier than before settled over the room. The millionaire swallowed. And school? Eli shook his head. I stopped going. Numbers don't leave you when you're hungry. Teachers do. No one laughed. One executive looked down at his polished shoes, ashamed. The millionaire felt his carefully built performance slipping. This was no longer entertainment. This was exposure, not of the boy, but of himself. You understand what you're doing? The millionaire pressed. You understand what this money could change? Eli nodded. Yes, sir. And you're not afraid? Eli looked around the room, at the suits, the glass, the power hanging in the air. I'm afraid of being invisible, he said. Not this. Something broke. The millionaire didn't realize it until his fists unclenched. He turned to the executives. Leave us. What? One protested. Now. They hesitated, then obeyed. One by one, the room emptied, footsteps retreating until only two figures remained. A man who owned everything, and a boy who owned nothing but his mind. The millionaire exhaled slowly. You know, he said, softer now, I made that offer to humiliate you. Eli met his gaze. I know, and you still stood here. Yes. The millionaire laughed once, not mockingly, but in disbelief. You didn't come for the money, did you? Eli shook his head. I came because you said I couldn't. The words lingered in the air. The millionaire turned back to the board, then to the city beyond the glass. His reflection stared back at him, expensive suit, powerful posture, and for the first time in years, uncertainty in his eyes. You've already won something far more dangerous than money, he said quietly. Eli frowned. What's that? The millionaire turned to him. My attention. And in that moment, the balance of power shifted, not with noise or applause, but with the quiet realization that this boy was no longer a challenge to be dismissed. He was a truth that could not be ignored. The room felt smaller now. Not because the walls had moved, but because the illusion of control had. The millionaire leaned against the table, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. For the first time since he had built this empire, numbers were no longer obeying him. They were siding with someone else. A child. You understand, he said slowly, choosing each word with care. That what you just did can't be unseen. Eli stood quietly, hands at his sides. The sack on his back slipped slightly, and he adjusted it without thinking, a small, unconscious habit from a life where you never let go of what you own. I didn't mean to cause trouble, Eli said. The millionaire laughed softly. You didn't. You caused the opposite. He walked to the window and looked down at the city. Cars moved like ants, tiny and predictable. He had always loved that view. It made him feel large. Today, it made him feel exposed. When I was your age, the millionaire said, his back still turned, I was already told who I'd become. Private tutors. Elite schools. Every door unlocked before I reached it. He paused. I thought that was talent. He turned back to Eli. What you have, he said, voice lower now, is something else. Eli didn't answer. He wasn't sure what to say to a man who owned buildings taller than any place he'd ever slept. The millionaire walked back to the chalkboard and stared at the answer again, as if it might change. It's not just that you solved it, he continued. It's how you ignored the noise, the pressure, the eyes. His jaw tightened. I built an entire room designed to make people fail. Eli looked at the floor. People talk too much, he said. Numbers are quieter. That was it. That was the sentence that finally did it. The millionaire felt something heavy press against his chest. Not pride, not anger, but regret. Regret for every time he had laughed at confidence without substance. Regret for every time he had mistaken volume for intelligence. You know, he said, that money I offered, it was never meant to be real. Eli looked up sharply. The millionaire raised a hand. But what comes next is... He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a sleek phone. He tapped the screen once, then handed it to Eli. On the display was a bank account balance. Eli's breath caught. It wasn't 100 million. It was enough. Enough to eat. Enough to sleep somewhere warm. Enough to breathe. I don't want your life to change overnight, the millionaire said. I want it to begin. Eli's fingers trembled as he held the phone. Why? He asked. I didn't ask you for this. No, the millionaire replied. You showed me I didn't deserve to keep pretending I was better. He stepped closer, lowering himself slightly so they were almost eye to eye, not towering, not performing. There's a school, he continued. One that doesn't care where you come from. I fund it, quietly. They test minds, not resumes. Eli hesitated. I can't read very fast. The millionaire smiled, not the sharp smile from before, but something warmer. Neither could I at first. A long silence followed. Eli looked at the board one last time, then at the man, then at the door. What if I fail? He asked. The millionaire answered without hesitation. Then you'll fail somewhere safe. And that matters more than you think. Eli nodded slowly. Outside the room, executives waited, restless, confused, eager to reclaim the story. The door opened. They straightened instantly. The millionaire stepped out first. Posture changed, expression unreadable. Eli followed, smaller than everyone else, but somehow carrying more weight. The murmurs began immediately. Is it over? What happened? So, did the kid get lucky? The millionaire raised his voice. This meeting is adjourned, he said. And so is the joke. Silence fell like a curtain. He placed a hand gently on Eli's shoulder. This, he continued, is not a spectacle. This is an introduction. No applause followed. No laughter. Only the sound of understanding arriving too late for some. And just in time for one. As they walked toward the exit. Eli glanced back at the board, the numbers already being erased by a janitor who had no idea what had just happened. The answers disappeared, but the truth didn't. For the first time in his life, Eli stepped outside not as the poor boy everyone underestimated, but as the beginning of a question no one in that building could ever ignore again.